How's that for a tomatillo harvest? Hi everyone, I'm Michelle and welcome back to my meadow. I'm gardening in zone 9A in Northeast Florida. I'm not an expert gardener, but I love showing you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and embracing the imperfection that learning to garden has to offer. Probably the funniest thing about these tomatillos is I didn't plant tomatillos this year. What you see here is completely volunteer. They were planted in here last year. I was working on a bed dig out for another video and it popped up. And by the time I got over and ready for this bed, this tomatillo plant was just too big. I was like, there is no way I am destroying all this food to make the video. So the video can be made later and I get to enjoy lots of recipes with tomatillos now. Now you might be wondering, when is a tomatillo ready to pick? Well, I look for the paper to be peeling back on it. However, this late in the season, I'm also looking at just the paper in general. It's looking kind of ragged. So here's one that didn't break through the paper, but the paper is almost done. It's not technically paper, that's just what I think of, the husk. And so even though this one hadn't broken through yet, the husk is really giving way. So I'm looking for any tomatillos that basically have a degraded husk or are popping out of their husk, or that easily come off in my hands. I figure if they are ready to pop off, they are probably ready to go in my belly. There are quite a few that have already dropped and are on the ground, and would I harvest and bring them inside? As long as they aren't bug eaten, I would. This one will end up in the compost or over in the worm bin. Tomatillos are, at least for me in zone 9A, a fairly pest resistant crop. Here's what a tomatillo flower looks like. Very similar at first to a tomato flower. And I find that the more you pick, the more you get. To harvest them, they just pull right off. If they pull right off, I definitely am convinced they're ready. If it takes a little suggestion, then they may not quite be ready. Some folks will pull them and leave the paper on the vine. I don't like to leave the paper on the vine, the husk on the vine. I like to make sure I get that off and clean. It is nice growing these in a raised garden bed like this. Beats the heck out of crawling around on the ground looking for ripe tomatillos. I have grown them in a ground level raised bed before, but I was 10 years younger than I am now. Tomatillos it's kind of funny, they're very sour. And so I don't know that you can, other than maximizing your yield, maximizing the quantity that you're getting, I don't know how big they need to get to be at their best, because they're pretty much sour even at their very best, at their best and biggest. Sorry, baby. Oh, goodness. I broke that off, so these need to come on off. So I'm just going to trim this up and shove it back in the ground. Very fancy propagation. Ooh. One of my big notices in here, having the tomatillos in a raised bed, is that even with all the rain, I've had very few tomatillos splitting, and I am not aggressively picking them after a big rainstorm or anything. I really believe it has to do with being in this raised garden bed here. Being up high allows it to get plenty of water, but all of the excess water has somewhere to go. And that excess water then is in the ground below. The roots can reach down for it, but they're not sitting waterlogged. And they seem to be fairly drought and heat tolerant. There's one. The husk is peeled back, ripe and ready to go. I just take my hand, just give it a little pull. Repeat. I'll be sure to include some information in the description about what it takes to grow tomatillos. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel to learn more about what's growing on here in our Zone 9A Northeast Florida garden. Until next time, my friends, remember to drink plenty of water, wear a high quality sunscreen, and as always, have a fantastic day. We are expecting another scorcher today, so I'm going to give these a nice watering in where I've pulled some of the weeds out. I've made some holes in the soil, let that all fill back in, and give them some love early in the morning before all this heat starts. It sure is good to have a working hose back on this side of the house. If you want to learn how I repaired my hose, be sure to click the video on the left. And if you want to know more about these raised garden beds, click that playlist on the right.